We are committed here to bringing really high-level guests that are going to contribute to you in ways that'll be super valuable, give you some actionable things to do to move your investing career to the next level. We are interested in really helping people move from either single family investing or not investing at all into multifamily investing. We are true believers in that investment vehicle and love to talk about it. Obviously, we created a podcast about it. So today I've got two special guys with me. They are based here in Utah, where I am, and we all love it here. Um, I want to introduce first of all Joey Webb, who was born and raised in Las Vegas and grew up racing motocross. He's broken 24 bones in his neck and his back. He's been in the insurance industry for 10 years. It's probably a good thing. I'm sure you have very good insurance, Joey, after all those breaks. And he owns his own agency in Salt Lake City. Been married for 8 years and has three kids that I'm sure keep him very busy. He's an adrenaline and adventure junkie, just like me. Loves to mountain bike and a lot of other outdoor activities. And he's always looking to push his boundaries, both personally and professionally. So an example of that is he signed up to complete his first full-length Ironman in 2020, which is super exciting. So Joey, welcome.
Thank you for
Good to
having me,
have you.
Tate. Excited to be on.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Joey's partner, Jaiden, is Jaiden grew up here, up doing live-in flips all across the state of Utah with his family, meaning that his family bought and sold properties and lived in them while they were working on them. And he did that with 20 plus homes before graduating high school. So he's deeply steeped in the flip model, the single family flip model. He's from Manti, Utah. Went to Snow College and has a master's degree in structural engineering from Utah State. Upon graduating, he started working for an engineering firm, making about $40,000 a year and working 50 plus hours a week. He decided that living paycheck to paycheck was not for him. Having a job was not for him, and started looking for alternative ways to create passive income. He started with a fixer-upper in Kaysville, turned that into a duplex. He quote unquote house hacked that home and was able to live mortgage free. We'll talk about that in a little bit, what house hacking is. And then he did a seller finance sixplex in Ogden with $10,500 down, which is a tremendous deal. And we'll talk about that deal as well. And Jaiden and Joey met about that time, decided to start a wholesaling business. And after finishing their first wholesale deal, Jaiden quit his job and starting his own engineering business on the side to keep the cash flowing while mainly focusing on the real estate side of things. Jaiden's wife is key in his business and his life, obviously, Becca, and he has two boys ages 3 and 1. So Jaiden, welcome to you as well, my friend.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So, guys, let's just kind of start with, explaining. We kind of got into a little bit your roots in real estate. Joey, we didn't talk so much about yours, but I think really let's just kind of dive into how you made the transition because you guys both started in single family, right? As did I. So, how did you guys make the transition? What was your inspiration to make the transition into multifamily? And when did you do it? How did you do it? And what would you recommend to somebody that's looking, seriously at busting into the multifamily space? Joey, you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so my background is I started in 2016, so about 4 years ago, and my very first purchase was a duplex that I house hacked 5% down, owner occupant financing. And I would say it's a fantastic for anyone that's looking to get into multi-units. For 1 to 4 units, you can do the owner occupant financing. And that was my start, really just to get my feet wet, to get comfortable with being a landlord and learning the business and the rules and regulations. And obviously, a very low down payment as far as getting into a rental property per se. And so now having that property, we house hacked 4 total. 2 of them were single family and 2 were duplexes. We ended up selling the single families when I really started getting more heavily into the multi-units. And obviously scaling single family, some people do it and that's great, but I believe in the economies of scale of the multifamily process. So we really just wanted to go that route. So we held on. We have the 2 duplexes. They're in downtown Salt Lake City by Liberty Park. They're flowing. They've got equity. They're great. I consider them kind of my foundation. And what I plan to do in the next 3 to 5 years is probably end up rolling those up into bigger, 20, 30, 40, 50 unit deals. And so that's what I'd like to use those as my kind of jumpstart leverage to get into something bigger.
Awesome. Would you mind explaining to the listeners what exactly house hacking means?
Yeah, house hacking, from my understanding, I kind of got the idea from Bigger Pockets and just trying to self-educate when I was getting started. And it's just really about having someone else pay a portion or all of your mortgage by either renting out a room or renting out half of the house or whatever space available or asset that you have that you can rent for them to pay for your mortgage is house hacking.
Yeah, and another aspect of it is since you're owner occupying it, your loan terms are going to be much more friendly, especially in terms of loan to value and interest rate. You're going to typically be able to get a much nicer loan than if you bought it just as an investment property.
Sure. And just a quick note for anyone, everybody's at a different scale in their investing career. And I remember, the first thought of thinking of buying an apartment complex per se was just completely out of the realm of why would someone want to do that? You don't really grow up thinking that you want to own an apartment complex, you know what I mean? And so it took a minute for the idea to really settle in, but moving into the duplex was a great starter for me to get into that. And then I'll mention it later, but the book that really hit the nail on the head for me was Big Money, Small Apartments. That was a fantastic book and I'd recommend it.
Lance Edwards, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that was the book that got me too. It was, honestly, was hook, line, and sinker when I listened to that book. It gave me all the inspiration and knowledge that I needed to really dive in. So that's How to Make Money and How to Make Big Money in Small Apartments by Lance Edwards. We've talked about that book on this podcast before, and I recommend it to anybody and everybody that's either thinking about multifamily or is getting into multifamily or wants to get into multifamily. It's really, really worth a listen. It's a great overview of the whole game, so to speak. He addresses what the mindset you need for this game and how you need to believe that it's possible, and which is probably the biggest obstacle that anybody has in terms of getting into apartment buildings, is how daunting it might feel. And how you're right, Joey. We don't grow up thinking, hey, I'm gonna own that apartment building across the street. And I think most of us probably just assume it's not possible. That's something that other richer people do. And the reality of it is that it's very possible for anybody without, with or without lots of resources, to get into this business and be very successful with it. So I'm really excited for you guys. So Jaiden, talk a little bit about maybe how you guys work, like what your daily activity level is like, or what your activity content is like, or as far as your marketing efforts, building relationships, and maybe also speak a little bit towards what you guys are trying to achieve here in the maybe in the shorter term and then also in the long term. I know that's an extremely large question, but
Yeah, that's all right. I get it.
Just talk for the next 30 minutes and we'll be good.
You got it. To preface a little bit, I think that we're in unprecedented times. There's a lot of change going on in the market, and we are trying to pivot our strategies a little bit just with the way things currently are. But a lot of our business model is based in the fact that Joey and I both have like we both started working full-time jobs in other industries that are putting the food on the table every month for us. And this is kind of our side hustle that we've tried to like really grow our wealth in. And so from the very beginning, Joey and I were very much, let's keep this hands off. We don't want to be working 120 hours a week trying to kick this business into the air. So we want to do it just straight out the gate without having to put too much time and effort into it. So our business model is to outsource as much of this as we can, get other people doing the daily effort for us. And on a large part, that's still very much the case. We hire cold callers to do a lot of our cold calling for us. We've got a guy who's doing the initial offering for us to offer on property that people are interested in considering an offer. And not until that point do Joey and I step in and say, hey, let's write up a contract. Let's start negotiating hardcore on this deal. So really, we try to keep it as much hands off as possible. So for day to day, I still do a lot of the analyzing of the property, like put numbers to paper and say, hey, this is how much we can pay for an asset of that kind in this location with rents at this range. But up until then, we don't even do anything really. We keep our cold callers busy.
Are your cold callers VAs? Are they local? Do they come into the office? And are they paid hourly? How's that work?
Joey, tackle that.
Yeah, they're local here in Utah. Just how we started out. We may expand to other states if we find people and connections. But really, what I feel like, I've been an entrepreneur at heart since I was born. Both my parents were self-employed, so that's all I've known growing up. And so I feel like as an entrepreneur, it's my job and duty to provide opportunity for other people to, create their own lifestyle and create their own dream job. And so what we try to do is we structure kind of a internship or a mentorship program with newer investors that want to learn and get into it. And really, as we all know, usually when you are a newer investor, you have less resources and money and education, but you have a lot more time. And so we present it to them and say, we want to trade, the time that you have for education and experience and a mentorship. And so that's kind of how we work it. And so, yeah, we structure it a little bit differently. Some people are licensed and some people aren't. So we structure it differently depending upon that. But yeah, we just try to really, not that we're against VAs, but we really want to provide local opportunities to people that are truly interested in learning and developing and growing.
And who are you calling and where are you calling at this point?
Utah and Idaho are two markets currently, so the entire state for both of those. You mentioned, you guys target zip codes. We just really try to go the entire state just to, get anything and everything, and then we'll analyze it case by case depending on where the area is at. Yeah, anything else?
I kind of want to backtrack a little bit here, Tate.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, Joey and I, we are wholesalers, but that's not the main motivation behind our wholesaling business. Our whole philosophy is we want to buy the best off-market properties that we can find, and we're not seeing anything on the market that is meeting our criteria. So we're going to mine these markets off the ML or straight to the owner, and buy the best, wholesale the rest, just like they talk about in Big Money Small Apartments.
Yeah, and I was listening to a podcast with Clay Rockwood yesterday, and he calls wholesaling to wealth. He calls it that process in terms of, kind of cherry picking is one word. You could use, the very best deals, but of course you are, right? I mean, those are golden opportunities.
We're buy and hold at heart all day long, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so you're buy and hold at heart. So what's the next? If you could wave a magic wand and produce the next great deal for you guys and your trajectory as a business for your portfolio, what does that look like?
95% seller financed 100-unit apartment complex. That's the golden nugget.
Okay. Awesome. So 100 units, value add or no value add? Just are you playing the cash flow game, or what are you doing with that?
Cash flow is what we base our numbers off of most of the time, unless there's opportunity that we can see in other areas. But that's where we're starting our offers at, or is on the cash flow basis. But we're always looking for value add opportunities as well. Um, when we get an opportunity to write an offer on a property, we always consider what would this look like if we wholesale it, what if we flip it, what if we do a value add, and what if we just hold it long term.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to structure deals based on what works best for the seller and the situation that they're in. But ultimately, we want to buy and hold. That's our goal.
Right. Okay, so take me through what I'm. This is what I'm going to just. I'm going to ask you the questions that I want to know personally, because you guys are doing some things that I think are really cool, and I'd like to learn how to do, or I at the very least want to just start buying deals from you guys. Um, but take me through a conversation that would lead to somebody that owns 100 units to sell or finance 95% of it. Like, what I'd love to hear some of the scripting behind how that conversation goes.
I wish I had the perfect answer to that question because we
Yeah.
haven't done it yet. But
Yeah,
go ahead, Joey.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, ultimately, it comes down to how can we add value to you as a seller. We want, like, our prime customer, our prime clientele is the mom and pop owners who are looking to phase out of their investing career. They're still looking for that monthly cash flow into their bank account every single month, but they're tired of managing property. They're tired of dealing with tenants. They're tired of answering all the property managers' questions. And so there's very targeted clientele that fits that need. But we offer that solution, and we want to be able to give them top market value for that property, but they don't necessarily need a huge amount of cash up front. I don't know. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So, and then how do you explain security to them?
Yeah, so this is, I would say, to kind of give a backstory of, we started actually back in November, so we haven't been doing it too long, but
Sure.
the initial thing that we realized is, cold calling or calling direct to seller on multifamily is very, very different than single family. Single family is a very different conversation where there's some sort of distress or some sort of motivation there. Whereas typically the multifamily, they're investors, they're savvy, they don't need the money per se right now. So that's the first thing and foremost, is it's an entirely different conversation than a single family wholesale. And then secondly, the thing that we initially ran into and realized is when we call and say, hey, we want to buy your apartment building off you, a lot of them in their trained mind, just because they've only known one route, is to say, okay, well, now I have to 1031 if I sell this property. So now we're calling them to say, hey, can we buy your property? And in their mind, they're like, well, now I have to go find another property. I have to get a broker. I have to go through all these hoops just to sell you my property, just to be in the same position I'm in already. I already own this asset. Why would I do that? And so usually they're comfortable enough. And so I realized that a couple of weeks ago that we were calling them and basically creating another problem for them to solve. And so you don't make a lot of money by creating problems for people. So we want to provide a solution. And so obviously we were offering seller finance at the beginning, but it wasn't presented in the right way. So now we're trying to present them in that way, that this is the solution, is the seller financing instead of the 1031. And let me explain the benefits of why.
To add to that, as far as like explaining the security portion to them, it's an investment on their part, but it's still backed by the real estate that they already owned.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest selling point to them, is that you're locking in a price. It's a guaranteed income every single month. You don't have a lot of the variables that are associated with that real estate, but it's still secured by that physical asset that you already own. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think if you have a business plan and you show them the business plan and they understand it, where you're going to actually improve the property and raise the net operating income, and I mean, at that point, they've just got a property that's a lot more valuable than the one that they sold to you. If they were to have to take it back for some reason, you guys didn't perform, which is highly, highly unlikely to begin with, because you've got cash flow that's going to cover that payment. Yeah. So that to me and it gives that person just a very secure position. I think if you can help them understand it, well, I think that that's really the biggest challenge with this model is just helping somebody clearly understand it, because as we all know, a confused mind says no, you
Yeah.
know. So it needs to be really understandable. And I've tried, I'll be honest with you, I've tried it numerous times with single families especially, and I've never gotten anywhere with it. And I'm sure that that's a lack of training and a lack of experience with it. But I think that's, it opens up deals that you otherwise couldn't do to be
Yeah,
able to
I
get those
think I
terms.
think yeah, a lot of it is preconceived notions as well. I think it's in my experience about 70-30. About 70% of the people say no, absolutely not, just because, like you said, they're confused or they heard bad things maybe, or they didn't have a deal go well. And then 30% of the people are just completely uneducated or have never heard of it before. And I think that's where the opportunity is. It's not every single person. And so a question that I like to use, this would be a gold nugget, a question that I like to use to bring up the seller financing conversation, because you never want to offend somebody and tell them, they're stupid or that they don't understand a concept. But I like to ask, on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you say you know about terms or buying a property on terms? And saying a scale of 1 to 10 gives them the ability to lower their guard and say, well, maybe I'm at a 3 or a 4. And then that gives me the segue and the introduction to explain it to them correctly versus having to combat their preconceived notions of what it is.
That is a great takeaway. And I think you can use that on a scale of 1 to 10 technique with lots of different things.
Yep.
On a scale of 1 to 10, what would you say your motivation to sell is? And then really starting conversations like that with questions. The more questions you ask in a negotiation, the better you are, the more information you have, the more you're engaging them, and hopefully the more advantageous your position is uh, because of the knowledge that you've gained from them and the way that you position yourself. That's awesome.
Great.
So, and what kind of terms are you able to, or what kind of terms are you shooting for in an ideal situation?
Typically, when we're writing offers, we like to write a 0% down offer because a lot of these guys don't necessarily need or even want that capital or capital gain at the moment of sale. So we like to write $0 down. Then we'll also write a 5 to 10% down. And once we get up, like if they really need cash, then we can start looking at other alternatives on the creative finance end, like putting them in a second and having the bank pay like a 45, 50% down payment to them. If they're looking to do something like that, it just depends on where the seller's at with their strategy. And speaking of strategy, that's another question that we like to ask. When we hear a hard no from somebody, like absolutely not, I won't consider carrying it on terms. A great question to kind of move that forward is to say, hey, what is your strategy? Like, do you plan on fixing toilets the rest of your life? What happens when you're looking to retire? Are you just going to sell this and then pay the capital gain on it? So that question of asking what is your strategy, it not only is another question to get them talking, but it gives you an opportunity to kind of understand where they're wanting to move, like what direction they're wanting to take. If they really do want to do a 1031 exchange and dump $500,000 into another project, maybe they only need $500,000 and the property's worth $1 million, so they're willing to carry another $500,000, but bring a bank on board. If they're willing to go step into a second, we can make that happen on terms and not bring any money to the table. So it's about presenting options to them, being creative with it.
Well, and you're solving a problem for a lot of people, which is what do I do with the money once it's cashed out? If you guys are
Yeah.
going to come in and cash me out, then what? Well, you're giving them a solution in that, here's retirement for you. You become the bank,
Yeah.
Mr. Seller, Mrs. Seller, you're the bank, and you have security and a cash flowing asset, and you're good to go. We're going to just mail you a check every month or every quarter or whatever you work out. And you're going to never have to think about fixing toilets again or tenants or anything like that. We're going to basically take the ball and run with it. And in fact, we're going to improve the property quite a bit physically. And we're also going to improve the financials quite a bit by raising rents. and hopefully reducing some expenses. And therefore your security is even more so because you now have the, if for some reason we defaulted, which is highly unlikely because we've got cash flow to cover the payment. But if we did, worst case scenario is you're taking a property back that's worth a heck of a lot more than it was when you sold it, which is brilliant. That's a brilliant conversation. And as far as it basically 1030 or a 1031 avoids capital gains, but so does this, right? So I think it's brilliant, guys.
I don't know that it avoids it; it just mitigates it.
Yeah, and it
spreads it out over the long term.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. It's basically a solution.
Yes.
It answers the question of what do I do with the money now.
Yep.
And I think
another thing that goes along with this conversation that we're having is that people have to trust you. Like, yeah, you're taking over this asset that they've spent a lot of time and effort managing and acquiring, and it represents a significant portion of their retirement, and if they're willing to trust you and hand this investment over to you on terms, that means that they believe that you are going to improve the value of that real estate.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know that some people worry about us coming in and running their property into the ground, and then what happens to the asset that was backing that loan? There's nothing left. They have to trust you and actually believe in your business model. So there's definitely a sales pitch that has to take place on you as an individual in order to close this deal.
Mm-hmm. Nice. So you have the conversation about seller financing to be had, and then you also have the conversation about wholesaling that you got to cover with them at that point. I know quite a bit about wholesaling single families, and I know there's a ton of disclosure that's required, especially for me as an agent. I'm held to a different set of standards as far as disclosure goes, especially revolving around wholesaling. So, you are maybe not explaining wholesaling and seller financing to the same client because you've got different situations, but can you kind of illuminate the conversation that you have with people about wholesaling when you're talking to them about, wrapping up a deal in a contract?
I think it's very much the same as the conversations you have when you're wholesaling single family. You still have all the disclosures. You want to be as upfront and honest with the seller as possible. But I think the way that you present it is that this is a big deal. I mean, you could be talking $3-5 million, whatever it is. That's a big project for a single person to take advantage of or to tackle, And so you pitch it to them like, yeah, I need to bring in partners or other investors, and we may assign this, we may do whatever we need to get this deal done, but you are my priority, and we want to take care of you in order to get this done. But yeah, I'm an investor. I'm going to make a profit on it, but you want to make sure that all your disclosures are taken care of. You may assign this property. You may do whatever you need to, just with all those disclosures that you would otherwise. It's just a matter of presenting it like I may need to bring in a partner, being totally honest with them.
So in our offers, we write Greenlight Equity Group, which is my company, Greenlight Equity Group LLC, and or related assigns. And what that means is that we can assign that particular contract to a new entity that we have some sort of interest in, that Greenlight has some sort of interest in, or that the owners of Greenlight have some sort of interest in. It's technically assignable anyway without that disclosure. However, and this is my understanding. I'm not an attorney, and I'm not a contract lawyer, but so yeah, it's something that can be super helpful in getting the deal done. And so okay, so 100 units, 95%, 5% down. That's super exciting. Talk to me a little bit more about longer term projections or goals for you guys at this point. Where do you want to be in maybe 3 years or 5 years?
Go for it, Joey.
Yeah, my goal is I'd like to create at least 150 door portfolio through this strategy. And like Jaiden said back at the beginning, I mean, I don't love the term that we're wholesalers because I'm a buy and hold at heart. So, you know, there's a lot of great wholesalers doing a lot of great things. So there's nothing bad about it. My goal is to acquire property. And so this is just the strategy. When I was doing the house hacking and moving around that so much, and my wife said no more moving around, and so I had to figure out a different strategy to continue acquiring properties without moving around, basically. And so that's where this came in. And so the goal would be to get 150 units, Utah and Idaho, preferably. We may look at other markets depending on the market area and what happens. And so really just generating that cash flow and having the assets to be able to leverage into bigger deals. My mindset currently is I want to stick between the 5 and 100 units. I don't have any interest at the moment, you know, going bigger than 100 units and getting an application process. That's all fine and dandy and people do well at it. It doesn't interest me right now. I'd rather have more ownership and more equity rather than having more doors. That's me personally.
Yeah, you can have 1,000 doors under management and own as much equity as you do if you had 200 doors.
Yeah. And I have more control
that you own
over it.
outright, and then you have more control of it. You don't have quite as many cooks in the kitchen. So I am more and more. My goal for a while has been 1,000 doors in 5 years under management, and while my monthly passive income goal is not changing, I think my thinking around how unit count is changing because I do see the value in owning a higher percentage of fewer units ultimately. So 150, Joey, is that are you set at that point, or you're happy with passive cash flow and that's good? Are you planning on ever quitting your real jobs? I actually have that question for both you guys.
Jaiden already quit his job, so
Oh, that's right. Yeah, sorry. Yeah,
I did quit
awesome.
my job, but I started my own engineering business.
Right. Yeah. So this is still a bit of a side hustle for you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd say the Robert Kiyosaki quadrant of the employed, self-employed, business owner, that quadrant. I think it was a great transition for Jaiden to go from being W-2 to being self-employed, and that's where I'm at currently. Is I'm self-employed, so I have zero intentions of ever getting rid of that. So I think it's a fantastic foundation to provide an income, to be able to provide a lifestyle. But I think, like everything, the 9 to 5, whether you're self-employed or a W-2, is never going to make you wealthy. It generates income to put food on the table, and I think the biggest mindset shift that some people forget to make is they continue trying to advance their career, whether that's getting a degree or getting an accolade or a promotion, and they want to go from 50,000 to 100,000 or 100,000 to 150,000, thinking that will give them the freedom and the enjoyment. But it's not a high income, it's a high net worth is what really makes you rich. And another book I'll throw out there is A Millionaire Next Door, highly recommended by Dave Ramsey. Thomas J. Stanley, I believe, is the author of that. So there's a very big difference between high income earner and a high net worth person. And so getting those two things confused, I think a lot of people get those confused.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Jaiden, is your long-term goal to continue with your engineering business? Obviously, you started your own, so I would think that you're investing a lot in that, and will probably continue to do that at some level, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I'm investing a ton of time. I'm trying to focus on the real estate stuff. I try and limit my engineering business to 2 days a week right now, just so that I can focus the majority of my time in real estate. Long term, I think for me, it's more about security. I also have sunk cost bias in my 7-year degree from Utah State, and I still have a little bit of attachment to kind of my engineering background. I want to keep the license up. It's valuable to me. But security-wise, I want to have multiple streams of income. And if I can do that on a more passive scale than an active scale, like I am right now with my engineering business, I would in a heartbeat jump to that passive income as long as there's multiple differently secured streams of income that I can create. So long term, I want to create passive income that is coming from different securities, different areas of security, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, this has been great because it gives somebody who might be sitting at home or on a treadmill or in a car some sort of like entryway into the multifamily space. And one of the things that Lance Edwards talks about in How to Make Big Money in Small Apartments is the oh, I just lost my train of thought. um, uh, I just lost it, guys. But he talks about, you know, quite a bit about finding deals, finding dollars, and he talks about it being a myth that you need to start small with single. That's what I was going to say. You need to start small with single families and maybe do a duplex and house hack, do a burst strategy on 10 single families before you even think about multifamily. And Lance Edwards calls that a myth. I call that a myth. There are a zillion ways to bust into this business. Joey and Jaiden just offered one, which is to do an internship for somebody, learn how to cold call, learn how to approach brokers, learn how to approach owners, and learn the business through Joey and Jaiden. I'm sure that obviously they've said they love to educate, they love to bring people along, and that's a golden ticket right there for the right person. And I've got that opportunity with my company. I think just about any active multifamily investor would be happy to have help. And to me, there's no better way than to have a mentor in the business. And I don't think there's a better way to have a mentor in the business than to offer value to that mentor in such a way that's going to elevate their business. This business is all about contribution and value adding. Quite frankly, it's the reason why we do this podcast is, you know, there's no ads. I'm not pushing anything. I'm not pushing my company. This is just 100% like what's working, what's not working. What are your visions? How can you help? How can you help us? What advice can you give us? And we really just try to offer that. And you guys have just done it sounds like a stellar job so far of building relationships, and really moving your business forward. I do have a quick question for you. Do you consider doing deals that aren't seller financed?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. I think we talked about it a little bit off the air, but when we submit an offer to somebody, we always provide them with cash offers, and then we kind of move to the seller finance. The biggest pull for us is that if we can get them on terms, we can usually get the seller a higher purchase price, and we can come to the table with less money. A lot of our cash offers are 60-70% of what the owner would actually want to close the deal. But I mean, we've done it in the past where we offer cash. We did an 18 unit last year that was $2 million cash in Salt Lake, and we didn't have the resources or knowledge to close that deal in the timeline that the seller needed. So we put that deal under contract and wholesaled it. But that would have been an awesome one for us to be able to buy if we had the funds and know how to tackle that big of a project in less than a week and a half.
Yeah, that runway can really screw things up when you don't have enough time to really get your ducks in a row. It takes a little more time with multifamily than single family to line it all up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you hit the nail on the head, Tate, is provide value. Whether you're a beginner or experienced investor, that's, I believe, the way you get to the top of any industry is providing value. Whether you're a nurse or a doctor or whatever you're doing, is provide value with whatever you can. So if you have the knowledge, provide knowledge. If you have time, provide the time, and trade that in exchange for what you want to get in return.
Yeah, and to me that goes for any industry, any job in any industry, especially in the entrepreneurial space. If you're considering opening your own catering business or cleaning business or car detailing or insurance agency or development company or whatever, go work for the biggest and the baddest and the best that are willing to take you under their wings and give them a commitment. Hey, I'll be here for a year or a couple years, and And this is what you can count on from me. And by the way, I'm really great at web design, or I'm really great at Facebook marketing and YouTube video creation, stuff like that. I mean, those are the kinds of things that are super valuable to me personally, that I don't have time for and I need to outsource. And I would love to have help with, and I would share anything and everything that I know about the business and about what we're doing on a day-to-day basis with that person.
Seconded.
What's that?
Seconded. Yeah, same
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, and I'm re-inspired, guys, by how you guys are doing that. We've tried that in the past with some folks, and not had a whole lot of luck. So awesome. Well, guys, this has been awesome. Gonna wrap it up here in just a minute or two, but I just wanted to. I really like to get into people's world about what makes them tick, and particularly in the area of personal development and performance based techniques, whether those are personal practices or habits, that sort of thing. Maybe Joey, if you want to start. I know you mountain bike, which is therapy and exercise and everything else. But what other habits, techniques, processes do you use to make Joey Webb tick?
Yeah, I'd really go back to what we said in the beginning about pushing my own boundaries personally and professionally. And the reason why I like to do that is not just because I'm an A-type personality and I like to show how awesome or how accomplished I can be. It is about testing my limits, and I kind of take it in the reverse order. Is kind of an interesting thought process. Is I like it to use to keep me humble. So if you're doing an Ironman, or if you're trying something on mountain biking, or you're pushing yourself to your limit, I like to use it to remind myself to be humble, to, we're not, immortal, that this life is very short. And so I really want to experience everything that I can in this life, and to spend as much time with my family and have cool experiences, enjoy the outdoors, be active while doing it, because at the end of the day, health is wealth. And I truly believe that if you have $10 million sitting in the bank account and you can't get off the couch, I wouldn't want to be in that position. So I really do believe it's valuable to take advantage of your health while you have it, and to use it and use your body the best way you can. Yeah, I would say just a couple of books that I'd recommend are the Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Joe Dispenza. A lot of things by Joe Dispenza that are really good.
He's my absolute go-to right now on YouTube. I've watched hours and hours and hours of Joe Dispenza here recently, and I think his stuff is absolutely groundbreaking and incredibly valuable to any of us.
Yeah, so it's using your mind and so your emotions are what control your actions in your body, and you're never going to feel like cold calling. You're never going to feel like getting out of bed and going on a 5-mile run. It's about training your mind to be able to be excited for it. So Joe Dispenza, we already mentioned Lance Edwards, the Big Money, Small Apartments. And then the final one is Atomic Habits. I know Jaiden and I are big believers in that. It's an incredible book. So that's what I'd recommend.
I'm trying to remember his name that wrote Atomic Habits. Sharp?
James Clear.
James Clear. I knew it had something to do with vision. Not Sharp. James Clear. Awesome. So Jaiden, how about you?
Yeah, I love to spend time with my family, get outdoors. I do some fishing, camping, boating. I'm a big subscriber as far as daily habits goes to Hal Elrod's Miracle Morning. I like to get up early, go exercise, and go through all those habits that he talks about. Joey mentioned Atomic Habits, and I'm a huge believer in putting systems and strategies in place that help me accomplish my long-term goals on a daily basis, making those incremental steps towards success as I've defined it. But yeah, I'm busy with the 3-year-old and the 1-year-old, and trying to find activities that we can both do together. Lately, it's been Legos. Yeah, we do a little bit of that, but build things. We got chickens recently, so building a chicken coop, and always doing some kind of a building project. So it's kind of fun.
Awesome. Last question, guys, for each of you. How do you define success?
Sorry, did you say how do you define success?
Yeah, what's your definition of success?
I'd offer initially the cliche, doing what you want, when you want, with who you want. I think it's true to a point, even though it is cliche, but yeah, I feel like it's just, if you can truly live for the moment and experience everything in the moment and not worry about the past or the future, and just be able to continue, or I guess I'll give you Earl Nightingale's vision, which I love Earl Nightingale. He's a fantastic, prolific guy back in his day. It's the progressive realization of a worthy ideal or goal. So if you're moving towards your goal and you're taking action towards it, that's success.
That's awesome. And it's like being attached to the process and not the outcome, right? Like that's good
That's
stuff.
big Joe Dispenza speak right there. Be attached to the
Yeah.
process, not the outcome.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. So, Jaden, how about you? Your definition of success?
Yeah, I think that for me, freedom and security is kind of the root of success. If I have freedom and security in the things that I'm doing, then I find success. Freedom can be defined in a bunch of different ways, but Joey said doing what you want, when you want, with whom you want. But I have big goals. I always am changing my goals. I think success changes for me on a daily basis. And I like to celebrate the little things and the big things, but ultimately freedom and success is what I'm after. And I try to tackle that on a daily basis.
Awesome. I would fully agree with both of those definitions. I think it, cliches are cliches for a reason, you know, and I think that doing what you want, when you want, with who you want is a tremendous thing to strive for. And if you find yourself lucky enough to be in that situation, I think you have a certain level of success. And I would also say that you need to have the ability to really fully enjoy those things, right? Because if you have those things and you don't have the inner peace or the openness or the ability to stay present and enjoy those things, then they're all kind of worthless, right?
Physical health, mental health, emotional health, they're all tied to that very closely.
Huge, huge, huge. Guys, I feel like we could talk for quite a bit longer. And I just want to say I've personally gotten a ton out of this today. I appreciate both of you. I know that you're going to absolutely crush it in this space. I can tell that you have what it takes, and you're already well on your way. And I'm very grateful to be in affiliation with you, and hope that we can get some really great deals done here in the future. So,
Right
guys,
back at you, Tate. Let's do a deal.
yeah, you bet.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Guys, thank you so much. This has been another episode of the Apartment Guys podcast. We're so grateful that you listened to the end, and we'll be back next week with another episode.
See you guys. Thank you, Tate.
Guys.
Thank you both.